With the historic vote this past week on school budgets on Long Island, for the first time, budgets for all 124 school districts on Long Island were passed by voters. Just a decade ago, voters turned down budgets by the dozens in districts. They were fed up with rising costs and sometimes double-digit property tax increases that led to higher and higher taxes on homes. But with Governor Cuomo's 2% property tax cap in place, budgets have passed with greater and greater frequency until this year's perfect score. Here to talk about that is Fred Gorman. He's chairman of the Wisconsin-Sachem Civic Association, and welcome to the show, Fred. We've had you on before talking about this issue. So what do you think of the vote and why unanimous?
I think it's terrific, and I think it's wonderful that it's unanimous, and I think it's great that only 15% of the people voted. All right, why? Because homeowners are staying home, they're enjoying their lives, they're not frustrated, they're not afraid, they're going to be able to live here another 20 years because taxes are controlled. And this is a system that isn't going to change. It's been in effect for 5 years. It has saved Long Island taxpayers over $1 billion.
Well, your group has long protested higher property taxes, well known on Long Island for that, and you pushed for these sorts of things. I could say the property tax cap was probably spurred by the complaints from groups like yours and others and frustrated homeowners, like you said. Do you consider this a victory? Consider
it a victory, sir. I worked with Dean Scullers the day he changed his mind and decided that he was going to do it. I worked with Sheldon Silva and his people, and I worked with Cuomo from the very beginning. And not myself, the Long Islanders for Educational Reform, many of us, we spearheaded all the actions throughout the state on this particular issue.
I remember 15, 17 years ago when people thought you were cranks. We'd go to meetings and they'd go, who are those guys with the signs?
Right. What's the matter? You don't love teachers?
That's true, and we'll talk about that. And everyone is crediting the governor's tax cap. Do you agree with that being the reason why we're seeing this passage of budgets across the board?
Well, that's the reason we're seeing the passage. Now, there's been some other changes. You know, to toughen that law up, Cuomo also introduced a refund. You're going to get a refund if your school district lives within the cap. If you don't, you're going to get a penalty. So that's added pressure for people to keep the expenses down.
Because the homeowners would go to the school board meetings and they go, I want that rebate. So you better stay within the cap.
Exactly.
And then, you know, and it's not just the cap of 2%. It's the difference between that or the rate of inflation, right? Whichever is lower.
Right.
And in this case, of course, we've all seen the inflation is ridiculously low.
It's 1.6 this year.
So we saw increases that were actually somewhere around 1.5% across the board. So now, what about the other side of this, though? You're going to hear teachers' unions. You're going to hear educating advocates. Some parents saying, yeah, there's a price to pay for this, though. They've cut arts. They've cut music. They've cut some after-school programs.
Which I think is a shame. Because what they should do is they should readjust all the teacher contracts. It's the 20-step process that really
What do you mean a 20-step process?
Well, you have steps. You have 20 steps in most
school districts. You mean for their contracts, what they're paid?
Yes, their contract. Now, that means you're always going to have teachers at the high end, and if the teachers at the high end retire in a large amount, then you can hire a whole bunch of cheaper teachers. You can usually get 2 for 1.
So we see this going on all the time.
Yeah, but you see, 1 minute you're going to have extra money, and then they're going to buy everything they basically want, and the next moment you're going to be tight, and that's all because of that step process.
So are you saying the teachers are overpaid?
I always felt teachers are overpaid.
But what about good education? People on Long Island prize that, and we have good schools, don't you think?
We pay too much to teachers, period. Their benefits are too good, their salaries are too good, and do they make a difference? Yes. Quality teachers do make a difference.
Well, you know, the highest salaries tend to be in the bureaucracy and the administration after a person's put in 15, 20, 25 years. But the rank-and-file teachers, their average starting salary is not that high when you compare it to other places.
Well, the starting salary isn't, but the finishing salary is enormous. And the reason it's enormous is because they want to get onto the pension system, which creates other problems. And that's another thing. When we're talking about school districts, if everything was level, you know, if they could predict what their salaries were going to be 5 years out, could predict what Wall Street is going to do with the pensions and everything else, they could really manage their money better.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't realize,
it's all unforeseen.
that it's based on what Wall Street returns. If they get the big return, then the local school districts, municipalities don't have to put as much into the
retirement system, which could go
fund.
anywhere from 2% up to 15%.
So that can make a big difference on what the budget
yeah, because it's 70% of the budget, 15% of 70%.
There are exemptions to this. A school can have an exemption to the property tax cap if, say, they have to build a new school or they have a capital project that they need to fund. Do you think the schools are doing that properly, or are there some of them using it as a way to get around the cap?
I don't see how it gets around the cap. A capital project is a capital project. If you have to build a building or you have to bring in certain changes, you have to do that.
So nobody's gaming the system there. These are legitimate projects.
I'm sure if somebody could figure out a way to game the system, any administrator who is working for a school district, whose responsibility is to get as much income as he can to oil that machine, should be doing anything he can. And there's a difference between being clever, scamming if you want, than doing something illegal.
All right, now here's something we got to watch out for, because the governor has warned that if the Trump administration cuts back on its aid to the state, which is out there in the coming budgets, we have a stopgap budget for now, there's a new one coming, that he's going to cut all that aid that they gave the schools that enabled them to stay into the property tax cap. You worried about that?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't think he's going to do it.
You don't think who's going to do it?
I don't think Cuomo's going to do it. I mean, Cuomo would kind of like be sort of nuts to turn around and get that many people against him, because he's going to be the one that's going to say, I'm cutting the aid because Donald Trump did this.
Well, let me ask you this. Isn't it all coming out of taxpayers anyway? It's just one pot instead of the other? It comes out of the state aid instead of the local property tax?
Well,
or at least
under consideration right now, you know, between the Republicans and the Democrats up in Albany is they're discussing increasing income taxes, or taking a larger portion of income taxes and using that to offset the loss of tax cap money. Now, that's something that's really new and unique. For 20 years, they've been trying to do this, and everyone says you can't tax people income to schools, but he's slowly trying to bring that transition.
Well, we're going to see whether it evolves into that or not. Fred Gorman, chairman of the Wisconsin-Sachem Civic Association, doing a victory lap here for everybody staying within the property tax cap, something they pushed for a long time.
We all can live in our homes to win 90.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping in.